My name is Uni, as you know, and I'm going to make a Silvermoon Quinoa. I got this idea because we were talking about mugwort. We love it right now and we need it right now because of its many healing properties, including it being antibacterial, antiviral, anti-fungal. We're going to use it in a recipe, and the way we're going to use it is kind of as like a bouillon of sorts, sort of like a way to steam some grains. Its reference to silver moon is that is known to help women regulate their moon cycle. So we're just going to start with a basic quinoa recipe. Cup of quinoa. You need 2 cups of water. You need a good handful of the mugwort. I just took a little bit off the ends. Super fragrant. You need a small saucepan. The saucepan should have a very good fitting lid. My favorite way to cook quinoa is really to toast it first or to roast it first. I think it saves the sort of the niggly part of it, which is to wash it and then like take it out of the colander and like deal with the little grains. I find that extremely annoying. Putting the quinoa into the saucepan. 1 cup of quinoa is going to create about 3 servings of quinoa, and I'm just gonna give it a couple of minutes of a light roast. What you want to do is just kind of move the pan around so that the heat distributes evenly. You could use one of these wooden spatulas to move it along. It takes away that little soapy flavor that some people don't like in the quinoa. It prepares it for cooking, and you just only need this 1 pot. You don't need to clean it first. Don't need oil, although you could, but it doesn't quite bring out the sort of rich flavor of when you put heat onto grains. If you see a few, disparate pieces, I would pull them out first, not in the heat. I'm starting to hear a little bit of popping sound. Sounds like a little bit of like a gentle rain. You might notice a smell. The smell is really important. Can you guys smell this? The smell indicates that something's cooking. It does have a kind of a nutty, roasted smell. Just want to be careful not to move it around too erratically. Just keep all the grains in there. The most difficult part of this is that when you introduce the water, or you could also use broth, the pan's already hot, so there's a little bit of splashback, and then it'll get very dramatic, and when it does, you can hoot and holler or do whatever you feel. Feels slightly violent when the water hits that hot pan. So just do be mindful and be careful, and maybe don't let your kids try this. You could also allow the quinoa to cool first. You could do this as a preliminary step. For the purposes of the class, we're just gonna do it right on the spot. The color has changed a little bit. It's a little bit darker. It's getting a nice little tan from the heat, and definitely now there's a aromatic quality. There's the popping. Now it sounds a little bit more like one of these crazy hailstorms we've been having. Once it's heated through, I'm going to put about 2 cups of water. Very dramatic, super dramatic. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit so the water can come up to boil. And once it comes up to boil, you want to turn down the heat to a very low simmer. Now, you don't really have to fuss with it too much. And in fact, I think you should just leave it alone for this time. You just want the water to start boiling and then reduce the heat. I would say that quinoa is one of those really amazing grains that you could kind of indulge in it because it's more of a protein than a starch. It has many of the 18 essential amino acids that are building blocks of protein, and I decided to try this recipe like this because I have quinoa in the house, and also because my mother helped me understand that back in the day they used to use this to cover rice in when it was cooking. So what this is going to effectively become is almost like another cover to keep the steam in. So if you like your quinoa a little bit drier, know that this might affect the steaming process that happens at the end of the quinoa. And so you might want to put like a couple tablespoons less water. I really love using grains. I mean, just the fact that it goes from almost like nothing to being able to feed a whole family, remarkable to me. So anyway, this is cooking very strongly. It's starting to boil now. Just want to let a little bit of the water boil up off a bit. It's a very easy, quick grain to have whenever, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then we're fortifying the quinoa with this kind of almost medicinal bouillon. Boiling, boiling, boiling. Want to reduce the heat to medium, low, or actually maybe even to low. You want to let it cover and cook for another 15 minutes. I will see you back then when it's almost done. So the quinoa's been on the stove for about 10 minutes, so let's take a peek. All right, so the water is absorbed now for the most part. You can see these sort of valleys of quinoa clusters where steam has come through. And once the water is absorbed, it still needs to dry out a little bit, but this is when I'm going to introduce the mugwort. I'm just going to place it on top. Okay? And the reason I didn't do it while it was boiling is because I don't actually want to pick the quinoa off the leaves of the mugwort. Make sure it's been washed really well. I'm gonna put the lid back on and let it cook for another 3, 4, 5 minutes. You can sometimes tell when the quinoa is very done because you will smell it being done. Just be mindful of it or set a timer. Once the water is absorbed, you let it sit for about 5 minutes. So the residual steam from the quinoa is gonna help draw out the properties of the mugwort so that you have kind of a savory, herby quinoa dish.